Friends, I thought we could begin the seminar with taking a look at the teaching as a whole, Krishnamurti's teaching as a whole. I think there is value in looking at something as a whole and also then investigating in detail the parts. So I thought that's how we might try to do this in this seminar. It's like looking at a mountain from a distance. You get take in the whole mountain and you get a different view of the mountain than what you get when you are very close to it, standing right on the mountain. You don't see the beauty of the whole mountain. What you see is the plants and creatures there, and things like that. I think something like that is also true of the teaching as a whole. So it would be nice to have a bird's eye view and then go into detail. So this talk is meant to give that bird's eye view or summary of his teaching, which will also give us the understanding of why he insists so much on this thing called the transformation of consciousness, what it means and what are the difficulties of coming upon that. Now when I want to do it that way, then I feel that there are some truths to which he has pointed out, which are like the pillars on which the rest of the teaching rests. It's like the rest of the teaching which is there in 70 books and all that is a scaffolding, and the pillars of that scaffolding are what I am going to talk about. So the first truth I think we need to investigate, which he pointed out, is contained in his statement, "You are the world." It means the world is the way it is because we are the way we are. But the world is not separate from us, especially the world as our society. He said the individual problem is not separate from the world problem. What does that mean? When I investigate that, I see that a child grows up in a certain environment which conditions his mind. So if you grow up in India, you grow up seeing casteism in operation, which is not there in the other parts of the world, but over there. Now what is outside goes inside because it's stored in the memory, and that child grows up with those notions. We call those notions as the conditioning, and the individual calls it as his culture. That contains some factual things, but it also contains a lot of opinions and views which may not be factual. And the importance that is to be given to those views or those facts is something also that the culture teaches and the individual. So all that becomes his mindset or his conditioning. It's stored in his brain. And he becomes an Indian. That's why the Indian is different from the American, is different from the Russian, and so on, because they've grown up in different environments, in different family, different religion, different views, therefore differently conditioned. So what is outside becomes what is inside. And what is inside, in turn, maintains what is outside. And therefore there is a tremendous inertia in society. Societies tend to replicate themselves. So someone started casteism in India 5,000 years ago, because it's mentioned in the Gita. May not have been in the same form in which it is practiced now, but what is actually going on now is the actuality. The other was just the initial origin of it, which may have been quite different. The child grows up with it, therefore he has casteism in his mind, he sees that in operation, he learns that, he maintains that as he grows up, and so it goes from father to son and so on. Now governments try to make laws, eliminate that casteism and so on, but they are not able to, because this process of the outside influencing the inside and then the inside maintaining the outside goes on. So there is not a tremendous difference between the outside and the inside. That's how I understand that we are the world, or we are our society, or that the individual is not separate from the society. So you cannot bring about a change in society without bringing about a change in the individual. You can make laws, you can control the manifestation of those things which are there in the consciousness of that individual, but it will, if you control it in one direction, it will manifest in another direction. So ultimately, if you have human beings who are egoistic, who are violent, who are divided, who are hateful, who are attached to their own culture, their own ideas, and therefore feel divided from others, then that division becomes a source of wars or terrorism and so on, and that is perpetuated. And that's what we find, that for 5,000 years human beings have lived with war, but we have not learned not to make war, because what was outside becomes inside, and what is inside maintains the outside. Therefore, you can never bring about a good society merely by changing laws or changing the government or bringing about democracy or economic change and so on. Those will be all superficial changes, outward changes that can be made, but these real deeper problems of society come from within our consciousness. And therefore, if one wants a real change in society, you have to concern yourself with change in the individual. And that's why the stress on freedom from conditioning, from your own particular conditioning. Otherwise, you remain in that prison in which you were born, and you have accepted all the values of that prison. It's not an actual prison, but it's sort of mental prison. It governs your thinking and your decisions and everything. So though you may be part of the world, you are a global entity, you become a local entity and you identify with that, and that creates its own consequences. So this will never, the main problems of our society cannot be solved without educating the individual and helping the individual to come upon freedom from this prison. That's one deep truth, that one must work for the transformation of consciousness and not merely legislation and form of government or economic development and so on. The second truth he pointed out was that The consciousness does not transform, or a human being does not change significantly if only his opinions change. So you can convince a person of one religion to join another religion, or one political affiliation to go on to another political affiliation, communist to become a capitalist, and so on. You can do propaganda, you can change his views, but that does not transform consciousness. There is not a tremendous difference between the consciousness of a communist and that of a capitalist. They have different views about how society should be organized, but inwardly they have fear, they have selfishness, they want power, they have corruption. Everything else is the same. The consciousness is the same, and so you cannot bring about this transformation of man through propaganda. The communists, of course, tried that. Marx gave that the importance of the state, because you change the outer, and he said the outer will change man. So that was their philosophy, that all right, let's remove private property, let's bring about equality, let's give people nearly the same salaries, the same kind of housing and so on, and we will create brotherhood, we will create equality, not through philosophy and through talking about it, but actually changing the economic circumstances. That experiment has been tried. For 70 years, Russia did that. Communism was enforced from outside by the government, violently imposed on the people. Churches were eliminated, made into museums and so on, but it did not, the result is that it has not changed man. Because at the end of 70 years, when they removed the pressure and went back to democracy, there was chaos. And the people went back to worshipping and wanted temples and churches and so on. Human beings could not be changed by changing only the environment and conditioning their mind into a different outlook. So, human beings don't change. You cannot change a human being by changing the outer circumstances. So again, bringing about economic reforms, educational reforms, and so on, unless they concern themselves with the transformation of consciousness, bring about only superficial changes in society, but they don't remove our fundamental problems. So you can't go about it that way. The third thing he pointed out was that the intellectual understanding of a phenomenon does not transform consciousness. So philosophy and the study of science doesn't transform the consciousness of people, though they have now much better knowledge of the way the nature works, or the way society operates and so on. You have knowledge, but knowledge does not transform consciousness. So, this whole idea that let's educate everybody, let's give them a lot of knowledge, expertise and so on, and it will create a better world, has also proved to be a false promise. It was considered that once we teach science and we develop science, we will bring about prosperity, and that will bring about a healthy society. That has been tried. At the end of it all, we are where we are. So, intellectual understanding also does not transform consciousness. The professor of philosophy is not Jesus Christ or Buddha. He's an ordinary man, but he knows a lot about Jesus Christ and about Buddha or about their teaching, and he can talk about it. But his own consciousness is not the Christ consciousness or the Buddha consciousness. So, human beings don't change through knowledge. I read once a small poem somewhere which pointed to this difference. It said, knowledge and wisdom, far from being one, oftentimes have no connection. Knowledge dwells in minds replete with the thoughts of others. Wisdom in those attentive to their own. Knowledge is proud that it knows so much. Wisdom is humble that it knows no more. So that it's a very different way of relating with life, and that doesn't change through knowledge. So knowledge just does not generate wisdom, and therefore this question becomes important as to how one can come upon wisdom. How does a human being grow into wisdom? We know how we grow in knowledge, and knowledge enables you, empowers you. So you can get power out of knowledge, expertise out of knowledge, ability out of knowledge. But all that is ability and power and efficiency, which then can be used destructively or it can also be used constructively. So what dictates whether a human being will use this power constructively for the betterment of society and for man, or to make war and war instruments of war and so on? That requires wisdom. And without wisdom, power is dangerous. So, it is important to investigate how a human being grows in wisdom. And that is this quest for truth, which is self-knowledge, because it is not something which can be given. Truth is not something which can be obtained through a book or through a teacher, because it's not at the level of idea, and it is at the level of perception. So this quest for perceiving what is true and what is false, thereby ending the false in the consciousness, is the essence of the religious quest. This is called self-knowledge, and self-knowledge is the key to wisdom. So the next important truth was that you can't learn this from a teacher or a guru. There are many gurus and there are disciples trying to be with the guru and to follow his instructions. And so have the religions done that. People have tried to follow Jesus Christ or Gandhi or any other individual. But Krishnamurti pointed out that you cannot really follow another. Because if I say I am the follower of Gandhi, what does it mean? I can eat the food that he used to eat, I can dress like him, I can sleep like him, because those things are amenable to my decision. But those are not the great things about Gandhi. He didn't feel any hatred for his enemies. And how will I eliminate hatred from my heart? And if I have not done that, what does it mean to be a follower? Similarly, if you are a follower of Jesus Christ, which is what it means to say I am Christian, then if it just means attending church and going to Mass and dipping bread in wine and so on, anybody can do that. I can pay 20 pounds tomorrow and become a Christian. Nothing changes. I don't learn anything instead of having a stupid Hindu, you will have a stupid Christian in the world, one more. So it's just like joining a club, and you don't really come upon any wisdom. So this whole emphasis which exists in our society of trying to convert people from one religion to another is a very superficial thing. I can explain it like this with a question. If a man is narrow-minded, selfish, violent, greedy, hateful, what difference does it make whether he is Hindu or Muslim or Christian or an atheist? And if a man is large-hearted, non-violent, wise, kind, compassionate, with love, peaceful, what difference does it make whether he is Hindu or Muslim or Christian or an atheist? So, the fact that we have given tremendous importance to the affiliation a person has to a particular religion or a particular view is an illusion. It does not have a tremendous importance. What is important is what actually his consciousness is like, and what is the wisdom there and the understanding there. So, you can't get truth in the form of an idea from a book or from a teacher. If you get it, you get only intellectual understanding. And that intellectual understanding is not wisdom, it becomes knowledge, which is power and so on. We have gone into that. So that's the other truth. So if I have to be, you said, you are your own teacher, and you are your own disciple, your own student, because you have to be a light unto yourself. This light cannot be obtained through a guru or through another. The guru can point the way, and he himself indeed went about pointing out all these truths. And I don't say it is not important, but he said, whatever I am speaking points to the truth. It can lead to the truth, but it is not the truth. Truth is at the level of perception, and you have to investigate it and you have to come upon that perception. Only then it becomes truth for you. Otherwise, it is for you only an idea, and ideas are not perception. So that's an important difference between knowledge and so-called self-knowledge. Self-knowledge, in a way, is a misnomer because it's not knowledge at all. It's perception. That which you have learned through your own perception. So what is to be done? If propaganda can't change us, if external circumstances don't change us, if opinions changing don't transform consciousness, if knowledge does not transform consciousness, intellectual understanding does not transform consciousness, then how to come upon transformation of consciousness? So, for that, he said that we have this capacity for passive awareness. You can learn by watching yourself with a learning mind, an inquiring mind, not a mind which is tethered to its own views and attached to them, calling it my culture, my country, and so on, but a mind that is inquiring, that is questioning, that is saying, this is what I have been told, but I am not sure if that is true, and therefore positing the truth as the unknown, and inquiring. Now, inquiry is not just an intellectual inquiry. It may begin with intellectual inquiry, but he said you have to watch yourself in the mirror of relationship. Relationship not only to people, but also to nature, to things, to money, to your work, to children, everything. You have a relationship with everything that evokes a response in your consciousness. So your consciousness is constantly being revealed to you. And If you have an inquiring, learning mind, which is wanting to learn about yourself, then you can watch what you are, because that is being revealed to you, and you have this capacity for awareness. And if you don't try to change it and then control it and so on, then you can watch what is the causation behind it. Why there is violence in you, why there is boredom in you, why there is sorrow, how does it arise, and so on. And when you do that, you begin to discover that in your conditioning there are a lot of false notions from which all this division and anger and hurt develops. And so, if you give up those false notions, which are illusions, which are simply mental constructs which you have accepted, they are not biological facts or physical facts of nature. So, those can be changed, because those are simply thought forms, and when you discover that that thought form is the source of a lot of discrimination or violence or sorrow, you can drop away, you can break it away. So when you discover for yourself that casteism is not a fact, that a child, whether he is born to a Shudra or a Brahmin, is just the same. We put this label on the child afterwards, that he is a Muslim or a Hindu or a Christian. That label is put by man on the child. Actually speaking, it's just a human child. Then you can come to discover, if you free your mind of that we are really children of the earth. And it is not only the Indian culture which is my culture, but also the entire culture, all the cultures of the world and all the wisdom in the world is my inheritance, not only the wisdom that was generated in India. Because just because I was born there, I don't have to confine myself to learning from India only. So then you have a global mind, and you look upon, you belong to the earth and you belong to humanity. You don't belong to a particular family, a particular culture. You may live there. That is an incidental fact, but it loses its importance. So you are living in India, but you are not patriotic. You are not wanting to fight for India and kill for India. India becomes only a territory. It does not remain a big division in your mind. So essentially that all these division and so on, they begin in our minds, in the minds of men. Wars begin in the minds of men. And to free ourselves from that is transformation of consciousness. For that, it is not enough to just know this through argument. You have to watch how it happens in your consciousness and what its consequences are. And then when you watch yourself like that, you will perceive the danger of it for yourself, not because Jesus Christ pointed it out or Buddha pointed it out or Krishnamurti's book points it out, but through your own perception. And when you perceive it for yourself, then only it becomes the truth for you. Before that, it is only a description of the truth. So that's another important thing that he said, that the description is not the described. The description of love is not love. The description of non-violence is not non-violence. And if you just learn the description, you are learning only the symbolism. The language is just a symbol. It is not the actuality. So it's like seeing a map. The map is not the territory. It is only an image of that territory. It runs in parallel, but if you live only with the map, you don't have a relationship with the territory. So if you go into the temple and the symbol of God is put there and you regard that as God and so on, you are mistaking the symbol for the actuality which it was meant to represent, and that becomes an illusion in your mind. So he said, when you accept the words of the Buddha or of Jesus Christ, they are illusions for you because you have not discovered the truth of that for yourself. And this process of discovery is what he called learning. Learning, therefore, comes from watching with an inquiring, learning mind, with with questions, living with questions rather than with answers and opinions, and knowing that opinions and answers have to be held lightly and not accept. If you accept them, you join a particular group or a gang and you are divided from other groups and other gangs, and that creates its own consequences. But when you don't watch that far, you don't see the danger of it. It feels like a protection because you belong to the same church, and within the church you feel a sense of brotherhood and so on, and you feel secure in being part of that community. But then you are divided from the other community. And so if you look farther, then you see the danger of it. But if you look only this far, it appears to be leading to security. And so this long vision is wisdom, and the narrow vision is what one is trapped in, which is creating the division. So when one is aware of that, then one posits the long vision as the unknown, and you are really inquiring into the unknown. And you are watching yourself with all these questions in order to learn for yourself all over again, and not accepting all the knowledge that has been given to you by your schooling and your culture, except in as much as your everyday life requires in practice a certain amount of knowledge that is useful, but not all the psychological baggage that is associated with it. So to give an example, for thousands of years, almost globally, in all cultures, women have been discriminated against, and it has been called our culture. We Muslims, we live like this. Our women are put in veils, and they do this is wrong for them and so on. It's all man-made. Actually, the biological fact is that human beings come in two forms, male and female. And rest of it is all human beings' ideas as to what is the role of the man and what is the role of the woman, what she should do, what she should not do, and so on. And that's all imposed culturally. And out of that, if there is this discrimination, you may call it culture, but you have the capacity to watch and see that it is discriminatory, and therefore you can break it. So that in a way, you need to be creative and not simply imitating whatever you have grown up with from the past, because in that there is a lot of cruelty. We have had wars, we have had a lot of cruelty of one community with another, persecution and subjugation, we have had slavery, all kinds of wrong things, calling it our culture, our way of life and so on, which is all nonsensical. So without investigating that, without positing that, we don't know what right living is. And I want to discover what right living is. That is a learning mind, and that's a creative mind. Not the mind which is blindly following whatever it has been told and obeying and conforming. So to create this inquiring learning mind, which is considered very important in science, he said you need to have that kind of inquiring learning mind in all fields, in the field of religion, in the field of society, in psychology, to understand yourself and so on. And this understanding of oneself through watching is the way one grows in wisdom, which is why self-knowledge is the key to wisdom. And without wisdom, it inevitably goes wrong. You only throw out a different opinion to justify. And then your mind, instead of discovering the truth, becomes like a personal lawyer defending the me and the mind. So I have identified myself with Brahmanism, with Hinduism, with India, and all my thinking is now going only like a lawyer who is trying to defend the me and the mind with which I have identified myself. So it's not in quest of truth. You are not in quest of truth, you are in quest of victory for the me and the mind. And that's the ego state. And that is the root cause of all the disorder in our consciousness and therefore in society. Because we said that what happens in society is just a projection of what is happening in our consciousness. So you can watch that. You can watch this tendency towards war in yourself. Actually, we call it war when guns shoot and planes bomb and so on, but actually the psychological warfare is a precursor to that. So in a way, the Third World War is already on, only you have not declared it. So long as that. So if you don't get rid of all this psychological warfare, it will manifest in physical warfare eventually. And so you live dangerously. And therefore it's important to understand this and free our own consciousness of this ego process within us. And you can't do that through decision. You can't decide not to be a egoist. Decision is a very small thing in our life. We can decide what dress to wear, what food to eat, where to go, which car to buy. But you can't decide to be peaceful. You can't decide not to worry. You can't decide to be happy. You can't decide to love. You can't decide to see beauty. You have to be sensitive, perceptive, otherwise you don't see beauty. So, all these things can be had, and these are the greatest things in life. They don't come from decision. They are a byproduct of understanding ourselves and life. And that requires a lot of watching with an inquiring, learning mind. And another day, perhaps tomorrow, we are going to investigate what is this learning mind and what are the elements of this learning mind. What does it mean, this learning mind? Because Krishnamurti said the religious mind is a learning mind, not a believing mind, not one with dogmas. That's a wrong opinion we have given to the word religion. So you need to live with a learning mind, and what are the characteristics of a learning mind is what we will go into in one of the talks later on, maybe tomorrow morning perhaps. Yeah. Okay, so I'll end it here. This is essentially the gist of what he is saying. And unless we learn about ourselves through our own perceptions, by watching ourselves with an inquiring, learning mind, you don't grow in your understanding of wisdom or in wisdom, and therefore you are living dangerously. And that is the state of our society. We have a lopsided development of our mind because we have a lot of expertise and knowledge and very little wisdom. And because that is true of millions of human beings, that's true of the world. So we are the world. And in other words, the world is the way it is because we are the way we are. And unless we change, the world cannot change in a fundamental, significant way. Of course, you can make some bridges, you can make a new kind of aeroplane. All that has been done, but you live under the shadow of all this sorrow and war and violence, which we are seeing in society today. Thank you. So we can discuss any aspect of this, which rightfully we should question, not just accept the arguments from Krishnamurti. I want to say that also. Somebody said to him in Rajghat, "Sir, why is it so difficult to understand your teaching?" And listen to what he had to say. He said, "Sir, there is no such thing as my teaching. All that I am saying is only to point out to you the need to understand yourself. You don't have to understand the teaching, you have to understand yourself. And the entire purpose of whatever I am saying is to make it clear to you that you need to understand yourself. Full stop. No followers, no disciples, no propaganda, just this. That's the only purpose of everything that I am saying. And simply to intellectually argue and say this is true, this is not true in his teaching and so on, is just, you will become an expert of Krishnamurti philosophy. That's another illusion, because that philosophy does not transform you. fundamentally. So that's not the teaching.
The question, first of all, thank you very much for all of this. What I'm curious about is how, when you were first introduced to Krishnamurti in your own personal life, how that affected you.
Oh. Well, there was a certain magnetism, a certain charm, a certain beauty which attracted you towards this man. They were undeniable. And he was different from any other man I had met. And when I say that, I had met a number of philosophers, theosophists, scientists, Nobel laureates who visited our university. I had known them closely, taken them around the town, had meals with them and so on. But I can't put anyone in the same bracket as this man, because he seemed to have a consciousness and a certain kind of perfection which was completely different from what you saw in a scholar or in a very knowledgeable person, whether religious or scientific. So that's one impression I had. But my own response to what he was saying for a long time was resisting what he was pointing out. Because my own conditioning and my own opinions countered what he was saying. And it seemed like what he is saying is nonsense. But somehow, and I can't explain why, this inquiry never left me. So I had this two parallel inquiries going on within me. One was the inquiry of science, which was my subject. I was learning physics, and that greatly interested me. Again, I can't explain why I was more interested in physics and not in biology or some other economics. The Hindus call that your swabhav, your inner nature, right? So your inner nature, I don't know why my inner nature is what it was. But I saw a parallel also in this inquiry which this man was talking about, where in science, in physics, we are taught to question why this thing takes place. You know, why does it rain? Why do the clouds move? And so on. You're all the time asking why, and you're looking for a causation of it. And here this man was saying whatever happens in your consciousness, also there is causation behind it. And you can investigate that causation. And where it originates out of an illusion, that means simply a mental construct, it can be changed because you can break that mental construct within you through your own perception of the danger of it. So I found these two parallel inquiries. There was no belief, there was inquiry. So I didn't see any contradiction between the scientific pursuit and this, you could call it philosophic pursuit, but it's not philosophy as only intellectual game, but it is demanding a transformation of consciousness which comes with the ending of illusion in your mind. I have already defined what I mean by illusion. And it's simply a mental construct which you are accepting from your culture. And that's not true. It's not true. So to discover the falseness of it, hence it.
And was the byproduct of that, was that a sense of freedom, I would think?
Yes, but it didn't come all of a sudden. There was a lot of resistance, and the resistances had to break down. I'm not saying it does need 10 or 20 years time to break down, but in my case it was so. There are some things which were immediately clear, but there were other things which it took a long time for those illusions to be seen through. So one is, the difficulty is that the man in illusion is not aware that his mind is in illusion. You take that as a fact, only then it is an illusion. When you know that it is not true, it's like a fairy tale. Fairy tales don't make any problem. You don't take the story of Cinderella to be an actuality. You don't take Mahabharata or Ramayana, whatever it says, as an actuality. You take it as a story. So there's no problem with that. But when you see that as an actuality, then it constitutes illusion. So you don't see that Brahmanism is just a mental construct. You see Brahmanism as a fact. I am a Brahmin because I was born in this family, and Brahmins don't do this, Brahmins don't do that. You have a whole morality, and that divides you from the other person, makes you hate the other person. It's your own creation of your own thinking. So when you live in this thought world, and you are not in contact with the actual world, and that's why that's the problem of the human mind, that it can create a thought world which is completely illusory, and live with this thought world and not be in contact with the real world. Animals don't have this capacity because they don't have that much imagination and memory like we do. And so they don't have ego problems. But we do. And we have created a society where there is so much cruelty and so much fighting. So are we really intelligent? You have to question that. Right? We think we are superior to the animals. We think we are. But actually speaking, the facts are revealing that we are the greatest pests on earth. We have done more damage to the earth and to our own species. No other species has killed its own kind to the extent we have. No other species has created slavery on that mass scale or produced Holocaust or what Stalin did and so on. So we are responsible for that. And we need to learn from that. Not keep on just this opinion that we are superior, we are.
All this knowledge.
Just a minute, she has raised her hand.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, first of all, how should we address you? And maybe if you
Krishna.
Krishna?
That's my one and only name.
Okay.
You can't address me by any other name.
And maybe
I am from Tamil Nadu. There the system is you write your father's name and then your name. And there is no surname. Okay. So there is only one name by which you can call me, and that is Krishna. If you want to add an epithet like Professor or Krishna or Doctorate, that yes, it exists. They call me Dr. Krishna or Professor Krishna because I was a professor once upon a time. But you can just call me Krishna.
yeah, thank you. And then I guess I was just going to ask it either now or at some point throughout the weekend if you could just give us a little bit of your backstory, which you're kind of doing now, about how you, a bit about who you are and how you came to be here.
Yeah, if everybody is interested in that, I have no secrets to hide. Everything about myself. But it's not important to know about me. But, okay. Well, briefly, I was born in Chennai, in Madras, in the Theosophical Society. My family, my parents belonged to the Theosophical Society, and they graduated from Chennai and took a job in Indore, which is in north central India. So I was brought up in Indore. I don't even know Tamil very well. I speak Hindi, which was the language there, and English. And my mother was a Montessorian, and my father was a physics professor in a college. So I grew up in a liberal family of theosophists who were educationists. And then I went to Delhi University for my master's in physics. Until then, until the age of 17 or 18, I was in Indore. And there I saw this Krishnamurti's talks advertised in the newspaper. And I said, well, this is the man, his books I was reading in my father's home. So I went out of curiosity to listen to him. And from that time onwards, I got hooked to this inquiry. And as I said, there were two parallel inquiries going on within me. So in my life as a scientist, this was the hobby. And in my when I joined the Krishnamurti Foundation, this was my profession and that became my hobby. So it's not too much change. A plus B is equal to B plus A. Yeah, but I have had these two parallel interests in them. Yeah. And about my family, where my wife is a doctor and we have 4 daughters, 2 of whom live in the US and 2 are in India. Yeah. So I'm quite a bit a family man.
Yeah, may I ask a question? We have so much knowledge, scientific knowledge. Even like smoking is dangerous for our health. But people keep on smoking. When I see, even here in Victoria, downtown, when I go and walk on the street, I see lots of cigarette butts are lying. So, knowledge does not change us. And when you started with Krishnamurti, you had also knowledge and you said you resisted Krishnamurti. So what is it which makes us see things clearly?
First of all, there has to be this passion about discovering the truth and the knowledge that you don't really know everything, so that you're not too attached to the known. You have to know, but you hold it a bit lightly and you're willing to listen to something else and investigate that. You know, this is also common to science, because in science also we are trained that what you see is not always the truth. The earth looks flat, but it is not flat. It appears as if the sun moves around the earth, but that is not true. The earth is rotating. And so to come upon the truth, you need to investigate before you find the truth. So don't accept whatever you are seeing to be the truth. And I felt that Krishnamurti was in a sense saying the same thing. This fact that you are accepting religions, you are accepting national division, is also like that. All that is non-fact. But you have just imbibed it, and a large number of people have imbibed it, and therefore you have made that into a fact. And now you are trapped in your own making. Yours means human beings' creation. We have created all this division and so on. So can we come back to a mind which feels, I am like these trees and so on. They don't divide. They are all part of the earth, wherever they may have grown. They don't belong to that place. So why do I belong to this place? The dogs go across to Pakistan. I can't. I'm stopped at the border. It's our doing. Right? We have created these nations, and those boundaries are now not only on the earth, they are in our minds. And they have been, so I said the outside becomes the inside. And so these national boundaries are creating division. We feel kinship with our own people and so on, and other people. So you have to ask this fundamental question. How does the mind decide who are my people and who are other people? What is this other? So those are deeper questions and fundamental questions which don't come to your mind until you hear a man like Krishnamurti, or you, if this is raised. And then if you are interested in that, you investigate that. But if you say, no, all this is philosophy and I'm an ordinary man, I'm not interested in all this, then you go out like this. But to come to your question about smoking, the thing is, smoking is one habit. But there is a larger question. And if you understand that larger question, then maybe several of these habits all fall in place. And that larger question is, what is our relationship with pleasure? How much pleasure should one have in life? And if you deny pleasure, it goes wrong. the religious people sometimes went into austerity as denial of pleasure. So in Buddhists and so on, you find that they are scared of women because if a woman comes in front of him, it creates desire. And he feels desire is the wrong thing, so he avoids women. So it becomes anti-life. Huh? It's not natural. And if you pursue sex, you pursue woman, you pursue alcohol and so on, also you get into addictions and so on, and also you spoil the life. So both denial of pleasure spoils life and pursuit of pleasure spoils life. Now how are you going to find out what is your right relationship with pleasure? That's the question Krishnamurti is creating. And he's saying no guru, no person can tell you this much pleasure is alright and beyond this is not alright. This much is need and after this it is greed. Nobody is going to give you these boundaries. So far desire is alright, now the desire becomes too much and should not be there, etc. You will have to find these things for yourself, which is why it's self-knowledge. But you won't find it unless you inquire. So if you have understood your right relationship with pleasure and the dangers of putting it into too high a place and the danger of addiction, then you will give up. You will not go to that thing. And you can notice this with anything, whether it is coffee or it is your work. When you find that without it, you are becoming nervous, you are becoming uncomfortable. It is already telling me, Krishna, you are getting attached. And I am aware of what attachment does, right? The danger of attachment. So at that time, I can decide to stop, and it's easy to stop. But when you are not aware of this danger, what happens? It's pleasurable, so I indulge in it, have more of it. A chemistry builds up inside the body starts demanding it, and I am trapped. Then you need Alcoholics Anonymous to go and put chemicals into your body and so on, help you somehow come out of it, and you go back and fall into it. You are into a big conflict. But if you had understood it before and you had this self-knowledge, you wouldn't enter into that dangerous zone.
Yeah, a friend of mine, he says for 25 years he has been studying Krishnamurti so intensely, but still there is no freedom.
What is Krishnamurti to do with self-knowledge?
Yeah.
He has created the question and gone, right? What you do with your question and what learning you come upon, that is your responsibility.
Right.
It is not his responsibility to solve my habits. No. So if I have not understood, I have to learn that, Krishna, you are not clear in your mind.
Yeah, but when a person studies Krishnamurti, he studies with his mind. And if that mind itself is not clear, how that clarity will come? Like how you also struggle.
Yeah.
And this person is struggling. So.
Yeah, but maybe he is struggling within an illusion. The illusion may be that he thinks by watching more videos, by reading more books, I will be transforming, and it is not true. So if you have that opinion, which is already a false opinion, your lot of activity can be expended and energy can be expended, you haven't moved even one step. So this is the problem, that the mind is still trapped in illusion and is trying to get somewhere, and that is a false thing. So somewhere you are this doubt that, is this true and is this right? Unless there is that inquiry, this danger is there of being trapped in a certain pattern. Now take education. Many people, the aim of education is to pass the exam with high marks, right? So they set up education in that way. Memorize this, and so on, get that exam, and that's it. Then education becomes such a trivial thing. And if you have a larger vision of education, that it is to enable me to learn about life and to expand the horizons of my mind, then it's quite a different thing. You will set up education in a different way. But the principal of that coaching class thinks he's doing a lot, And he's working very sincerely, but he's working in a very false paradigm. He's working with a very false paradigm. He's not aware that he has a very narrow paradigm within which he is functioning. This is what happened to religions also. I mean, they did a lot. I mean, the Buddhists and the Christians, they put in a lot of effort. But they put in the effort into control. And control doesn't lead to freedom. Right?
Yeah.
So somewhere it is still, your effort can be expended
Yeah.
in an illusion, and you are not aware of that illusion, then it doesn't solve that. It won't solve that problem. And you start blaming Krishnamurti for it or his teaching for it, saying, I have been reading this guy for 20 years and nothing has happened. Like that.
Like in Buddhism, Devdatta, who was Buddha's cousin, he also became monk, and he was a respected monk in the monastery, and he could give very good talks. But after 20 years, the jealousy still remained, and he wanted to take Buddha's position, and he fought with Buddha. On the other hand, Angulimal, who was a dacoit, who was killing, and he had a first meeting with Buddha, and something happened, triggered, So what is it that something triggers very quickly in one person, and the other person for many, many years keep on struggling?
There is a dialogue between Krishnamurti and Scott Forbes, which I think hinges on this issue, at least partially. It comes to my mind. He says to Scott when he is handing over charge of Rockwood to him, is Scott aware that the seed of intelligence is there in him? It has its own flowering. He has nothing to do with it. But he can kill it. He can kill it, right? So, if I am killing my own learning, it's my doing, right? I have to accept that responsibility, but if I keep blaming the teacher or I keep blaming the practice and saying why is nothing happening and this is useless and so on, I'm already caught in that paradigm of blaming and thinking that somebody else must bring about that transformation for me. I'll sit here, I won't learn anything, but all goodies should come to my door. That attitude is somewhere there. You're not willing to change, you're not willing to learn. So the resistance is there within us. Another dialogue I want to point out, which I learned a lot from that. Once Krishnaji had given a talk in Russia saying that how to end conflict, that you can be completely free from all conflict and lead a life without any conflict whatsoever. So I went to him afterwards and I said, sir, your lectures are announced 6 months in advance.
Your lectures?
Your lectures are announced and fixed 6 months in advance. Their program is to come, back in Delhi, this thing. On the day you wanted to give the lecture, if you don't feel like giving the talk, will it not create conflict? Because you have made an appointment, you have to give the talk, but you are not feeling like it. Right? Because in our life we have a lot of those conflicts. As a teacher, one day you don't feel like going to work and so on. Anyway, listen to what he said. He said, sir, if I didn't feel like giving it, I won't give it. But it has never happened. Right? So I learned what this freedom from conflict is. It's freedom from all inner resistance. There is no resistance to doing what you have decided to do. You have made a timetable, you have agreed to meet somebody, and why does it happen that that day you don't feel like it? That's a moodiness. And you have to get rid of this moodiness. Because somewhere you are giving too much importance towards your wish. I don't want to do this, I want to do that. The I is becoming important. And if that is not there, you just and just do it like water adjusts to whatever is the structure. It just bends and moves around. Water is not blocked, but your car is blocked because it needs a lot of space to go through. So can I be like that and flow into life and not resist life? So this absence of inner resistance is freedom. Not freedom to do whatever I like, whenever I like, and that concept which is floating around in society is not freedom, it is license. That I must be allowed to do whatever I like. I can say whatever I want. I can abuse people. I can do whatever I like. That is freedom of expression and so on. What we normally call freedom. That's not the freedom Krishnamurti is talking about. It's the freedom from conditioning, freedom from all these negative emotions, disorder in consciousness, freedom from that inner resistance. Yeah? So it's a much deeper thing. It's a very much more profound thing than what we talk about politically or democratically, saying freedom to vote, freedom to talk, freedom to write whatever I want. It's an inner freedom, what he is talking about. That's the ending of conflict.
It's off the subject, but in your writing somewhere you said like we have to put the two birds on a tree.
Yeah, it's
What
not
does that-
mine, it is in the Upanishads.
Yeah, but yeah. So what does that really explain?
Yeah, it is interpreted by different people in different ways, but I think that they are pointing out, there have been wise people in all cultures at all times, and these truths have been talked about, particularly in the East, because this inquiry went on in all religions. So, some wise man who wrote that poem is saying, the metaphor, he is saying there are two birds sitting on a tree. The first bird is nibbling on the fruit and tasting its sourness or sweetness. The other bird is only watching what this bird is doing. And the learning comes from the second bird. Okay, so I take that to mean that your ego is trapped in pursuing pleasure or avoiding pain, which is the ego process. That's the first bird. Okay, and the second bird is this capacity for awareness. Second is can watch what this bird is doing and can inquire and whatever, learn from that. The deeper learning comes from the second bird, which is the witness consciousness. Yeah, it's not actually tasting the fruit or so on. It's only watching what this bird is doing. And from the second bird comes the learning. That's very similar to what Krishnamurti calls passive awareness. The psychologists call it witness consciousness. We have this witness consciousness, which means you are not interfering with the phenomena. You are only watching and seeing the phenomena. Can you watch yourself like that? But quickly you form an opinion, you get sense of shame, you say it should not be so, I should not be angry, why did I do this, repentance and so on. So you complicate it. But just watch. Right? Don't identify with it as me. Just watch. It's a phenomenon of nature which is taking place within you. Watch with the intention of simply learning about it, not changing. When you want to change it, it brings in your own desires and ego process, it becomes an ego process. When you are only watching it to learn about it, it is non-egotistic. So that's why Krishnamurti says the first step is the last step. This inquiry itself, this learning itself has to be free from ego. Because through an ego process, you cannot come to freedom from the ego. The means are the end. All those things connect. So once you go deep into this inquiry, you begin to see that this intelligence and love and compassion and truth and beauty are all more or less the same thing. They all lie in the same bracket. But the words divide and we feel they are different things, but actually when you go into deep waters, you see that it's the same thing. And Keats wrote that, no? Truth is beauty, beauty truth. That's all there is to know and all you need to know. So there have been also poets and other, Shakespeare for example, he said so many truths. So there are the people who have come upon those truths and voiced them.
Just on that topic, I'm just interested from a psychological point of view. Can the watcher also be conditioned? See, I think there's a lot of confusion around this idea of self-inquiry, because in the last 100 years we live in a psychological society in which psychological I in the Western world, inquires into myself.
Yeah.
So we have this division of
Dichotomy.
thought, and that I that's been very psychologically conditioned now here in the last century is doing a psychological inquiry into myself. And so this term self-inquiry always puzzles me, and then you hear it also talked about in Krishnamurti circles as awareness, which appears to me to be something much broader, because this I looking at myself seems very sort of narrow inside this little brain that's all focused on me. And so I guess my question is not this me always in context, and how does one look at that? Or who's doing the looking? I mean, I know that's a sort of cliche, but it's always puzzling.
Yes. Yes, this is a very profound question, and Krishnamurti has talked about this observer and observed in many of his talks and gone deep into it. And at the same time it remains a very difficult topic, in the sense it's very difficult to be very clear about it. But let's inquire, not get dissuaded from it, saying it's hopeless or impossible. There is this capacity to see, to perceive. When I look at the tree, I see the same thing as you do, more or less. You may be colorblind or something, leave out those small physical differences. Basically, you see the same, the tree. But then, the response I give to it, my brain gives to that, seeing that image on the retina, is different from the response you give. The Hindu looks at the cow and feels it's a sacred animal. That opinion is coming from his conditioning. The American looks at the cow and says, wonderful beef, right? So he is coming from his conditioning. The interpretation or the response from the brain is conditioned. So that the observer is giving that opinion, and that's different for different observers. But the initial act of simply the image formation, in that there is no interpretation. So the deeper question is, I am conditioned, because you can't wipe out that conditioning. It is sitting there in your memory. I can't wipe out those memories. It's not like something on the blackboard where you just move a duster and make it clean. There is no duster to clean out, and you don't want to, because that would lead to amnesia. So what does it mean, this freedom from conditioning? Yeah? If you don't have this freedom from conditioning, then you are trapped. Freedom from something is not the absence of that thing. Freedom from property is not absence of property. Freedom from your wife or husband is not absence of your wife or husband. That would be trivial. That means that he has to die before you are free, right? No. Freedom means that relationship or that opinion or that memory does not dominate in your consciousness. So you are not attached to it. It's freedom. When you are not attached to it, there is freedom. So freedom from the known is there. I can't wipe out the physics. My brain has all that physics I learned. I didn't learn art. I don't know art, but I know physics. That's a fact. How do I relate to that mental property which is sitting in my brain? Do I identify with it? Do I derive importance from it? And so on, then it becomes an egotistic thing. But if I am just aware of it the way I am aware of my hand and my skin color, without making any big investment in it, right? It's a fact that my color is brown and yours is white. But the importance you give to it, if you give a lot of importance to it, you become a racist. Right? But if you just see that the man from Europe has white skin and the man from Africa has black skin, that's just awareness. It's a fact. It's not racism. But the moment you say whites are superior to blacks, right? You have now identified with whites because you have a white skin and you have created a division out of it and so on. It's a mental process which happens within you. If that doesn't happen, it's just part of awareness to notice this man is white skin, that man is dark skin. So where does this importance or sense of belonging that I am a white and not a black, and therefore I am with whites and my mind argues for whites all the time against the blacks and so on. Where does that whole psychological process arise? You have to free your mind of that. So that it's not important. It's like seeing a difference only as a difference and not creating division out of it. So the question that, as a psychologist, I would raise the question, how is it that there are many differences which we see only as differences and they don't create any division? For example, you have not had a war between tall people and short people. They are different, right? But somehow short people don't group together and tall people don't group together and they don't make two communities and fight with each other saying the shorts versus the talls, right? So you have this capacity to perceive a difference only as a difference. There are some other differences where you create division. He's a Muslim, he goes into that mosque, I go into the church. And your mind has given tremendous importance to the particular way a man worships God and goes into this building or that building, and whether he does it 3 times a day or 5 times a day, and whether you go to church and he goes to mosque and so on. It's all make-believe, it's all a construct, it's all illusion. From that illusion, the division is coming. You can free your mind of that. It doesn't make any difference which way you pray to God, or you do it in your home, or you do it there. You put a label on it or you don't put a label on it, you call him a god or don't call him a god, you call it intelligence, or Einstein said there is a great intelligence of nature. It doesn't matter what concept, but when you give tremendous importance to it and you join with people who belong to that opinion and identify with it, you create division. So find out whether you cannot, now that's a question to live with. Can I watch differences and let them remain only differences, which is natural? In nature, no 2 trees are alike, no 2 animals are alike, no 2 things are identical. Even our fingerprints are not identical, right? So the difference is natural. Division is not natural. Division is a creation, psychological creation of the human mind. Free your mind. See a difference only as a difference. This man is old, this man is young. Where does the feeling come, you must be young and not old? This whole thing of old contemptibles and so on. Behind that there is a whole lot of conditioning. That you are evaluating people in terms of their ability. And this old man is now a liability on society, he doesn't contribute to society and so on. It's nonsense, all that. So if you give up all that, free. Yes, one man is old, one man is young, the child is young. And child is child and this man, nothing, no superior, no inferior. If your mind is not measuring in terms of ability, it doesn't create division. And then you respect all. You respect the child.
See, I understand it at that level. My question is more about this division between I and myself, the division in the...
Yeah, so my opinions come from my conditioning. I am much more than my conditioning. If I put my condition, I don't identify with my conditioning, it becomes like that computer sitting in the corner. I use it when I want to check my emails, but it's not all the time, my mind is not in that computer. Why is your thought process governing you? That's the question. I'm not saying I'm free from that. That's the question. Is that thought process or the memory is also a property I hold. Why is that property dominating in consciousness? When I need that, I can use that. When I don't need that, I leave it out. So that I'm just aware, I'm watching, I'm seeing, I'm not thinking about it. That's the state Krishnamurti describes. Now, that is a level of freedom. If you can come upon it, you come upon it. If you can't come upon it, you can't come upon it. Like he said, the man cannot give up smoking. He's trapped. He may not be able to come upon it. But we have the capacity to break these habits, including the habit to continuously think and to let your thoughts drive you, rather than you are not the master of your thoughts are your master.
This word inquiry though tends to immediately start me thinking. As soon as I hear self-inquiry, how do I inquire? I inquire with thought.
Yes,
Then what you're
let's
talking about is
put
something a
that
little
that way.
different.
There is a point up to which intellectual inquiry has significance. Because the logic, I'm using that logic to communicate with you right now. So as communication, it has importance. Yesterday we said that analysis can point out something is false, because the ultimate truth is not irrational. If you can point out that it is rationally not possible, then you know that it is not true. But that doesn't mean you have perceived what is true. So it can't bring you to truth. That is its limitation. But it can point out that this is false, and to that extent it can free you of the false. So this inquiry also, when you see some illusion as an illusion, it drops away. Right? But that doesn't mean that you have come upon the total reality, because there are other illusions in your mind. So this learning, we'll talk about it in detail. This learning is the elimination of illusion in the mind. And the extent to which your mind is free from illusions, to that extent you are living not in an illusory world, but in a real world. You are in contact with the real world. Otherwise you have created a thought world of your own in which you are living. And you see that in the younger generation now, they are living in the Facebook. They are in contact with 20 other, 50 other friends, and whole day long they are chatting and their mind is there. So your children and your grandchildren don't pay attention to you because their mind is half in the Facebook, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but the same kind of thing happens to us when we are trapped in this mental property which is held in our consciousness. So I would say the following, only from the point of view of investigating, that there is a personality. We all have a personality. And there is also the universal human being in each one of us. This capacity for imagination, of language, of thinking, of memory, of awareness, which is common to all mankind. There is that universal consciousness. And there is also the particular consciousness of Krishna, which is because he grew up in a particular family, a particular language, a particular culture, and so on. Sitting there. Don't identify with this. Identify with the universal man. That's what I am. This is the screwdriver. I use it when I want to open a thing, otherwise it lies there. Right? So that's freedom. To be free from this personality means not that the personality is absent, but it doesn't interfere and dominate in the consciousness. That is to observe without the observer. Krishnamurti talks about observing without the observer. Observer is all these opinions, interpretations, reactions to what is being observed. To free yourself of that is to free yourself from yourself.
Thank you.
It strikes me as
I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying I have done it.
No,
These
and
are
just to
just
finish
reading.
that, what my understanding, sorry,
No,
I'm just
don't
going to
say
finish
it.
it, and then I'll shut up. To finish that, what my understanding is then the psychological inquire that we've been used for the last 100 years is really taking a very short view. And what I'm hearing you talking about, Krishnamurti, is somehow taking a much broader, longer view at who I am as a human. And the longer view you take, the less particular your identifications are. And so that's what I'm hearing
Yes,
from
this
you,
is
and
true.
that helps. when
Wisdom
you
is
inquire
long
that.
vision.
Yes.
Long vision is wisdom. The narrow vision, the immediate vision is ego.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's still been the same. The paradoxical thing that I experience in my own life is that my need has been to understand this smaller part as a necessity to feel the expansiveness and the unfolding into the universal. And so, in order to let go of the small, or how you describe the unique personality, my essence, or how I need to be fully aware of it to the extent of self-inquiry into it. So I can distinguish between the awareness of the ego and dropping it. Is that what I'm hearing, or do you understand? It's
No,
so,
slight difference. Don't
Okay.
start with the idea of dropping it, is what I would say, because that becomes an aim
yeah, no,
to be
no, that's wrong.
accomplished. No,
Yeah.
just let me say a little bit. Because it's very subtle what you're pointing out. What this whole thing is very subtle, because it's subtle because the false and the true run very close together, and you go in from one area to the other imperceptibly. Therefore, that's what I mean by subtle. You have to pay attention and watch very carefully in order to discern what is true and what is false. Because it's at the motive level, whether you are coming out of attachment or you are coming out of love, the two things are very parallel to each other. In one case there will be fear, in the other case there is no fear, there is no dependence, and so on. So, unless you watch very carefully, you will mistake the one for the other. So, they call them close enemies. They are called close enemies. Close in the sense they look the same. But they are enemical because one is egotistic, the other is not egotistic. The man is working very hard in his laboratory, 16 hours a day. Is he doing that because of ambition? Because he wants to be the first? Because he wants to publish his paper and get the Nobel Prize? Or is that the passion of his life? He is wanting to answer a certain question, which is Buddha's question as to why there is sorrow in man. Okay? So, you can't say outwardly it will look the same, that the man is working very hard. You don't know whether he is working ambitiously or that is his love of life. Yeah. There is an interesting dialogue in the Gita about this. Because Gita also very profound book where people inquired into all these questions long, long ago, 5,000 years ago. And there Arjuna asks Krishna, the God, what is this liberated man like? How does he sleep? How does he work? How does he eat? Tell me about him. So he says, outwardly he will seem to you to be the same as the ordinary man. He sleeps like the ordinary man. He works like the ordinary man. He eats like the ordinary man. But it's not the same thing because he doesn't do it for the same reason. He doesn't say so briefly. It's a long reply, you can read it in the Gita. But the gist of it, I'm saying, is what he's saying is it is at the motive level that the difference is there. He's not doing that for the same reasons.